The girl didn't run. She climbed, step by step, past peeling numbers and flickering lights, her breath tight, palms damp, heart loud not from fear, but from the strange, steady rhythm of letting go. 17 floors. No elevator. The building had been condemned years ago, but the city never finished what it started, just like everything else in her life. By the 12th floor, her legs were shaking. By the 15th, her tears had dried. She wasn't afraid anymore. She had planned it. The note was written, folded, and left in the hollow space behind the medicine cabinet of her foster home. Not that anyone would open it. Not that anyone there really looked. At the 17th, she pushed the roof door. It opened with a creak and a gust of air that smelled like tar, smoke, and winter. Too early for October. She stepped out. Below her the city pulsed. Horns, voices, flashing lights. All of it moved as if her absence would not change a thing. Which, she thought, was exactly the point. She moved toward the ledge. No one saw her, except the boy. He wasn't supposed to be there. He crouched 4 floors below, tucked between the stairwell wall and a broken vending machine, knees pulled to his chest, hoodie up. He didn't hear her footsteps. He felt them, the rhythm, the shift in air, the way the stairwell seemed to tilt with the weight of another secret. When she passed, he didn't speak, didn't move. But he saw the shape of her fingers clenched, raw, shaking. He saw her leave something on the landing, a cracked phone with a sticker of a rabbit on the back. It buzzed once. She didn't look back. He waited 10 seconds, then stood and followed. On the roof, the girl stood with her shoes half off, toes curled at the edge of the concrete, eyes unfocused on the street far below. The boy stopped in the doorway. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, "You dropped your phone." She turned, saw him, froze. She didn't scream, didn't run, just whispered, "What are you doing here?" He shrugged. "Hiding." She blinked fast. "From who?" He didn't answer. She looked back at the street. "You shouldn't be here." "Neither should you." A silence stretched between them, sharp, cold, real. Then her voice broke. "Are you going to stop me?" "No." He stepped closer. "But I'll sit here until you change your mind." She stared at him. "Why?" He sat cross-legged near the wall, resting his arms on his knees. "Because you looked like you were waiting for someone to notice." And that was when the door behind them creaked again. "Out," said the woman. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the air like ice on glass. She stood in a brown coat, too long for her frame, a faded scarf at her neck, and eyes that did not blink, as if she'd seen far worse than teenagers on rooftops. The boy flinched. The girl backed away from the ledge just a little. The woman stepped forward. "This building's been under watch for 3 weeks. You're trespassing. I could call the police, but I won't." The girl opened her mouth, but no sound came. "Because," the woman continued, "I think I understand." She looked at the boy. "And you. You've been sleeping in the stairwell, haven't you?" He said nothing. The girl stared at the woman. Who are you?" The woman paused, then said, quietly, "Someone who used to come up here too, a long time ago." She didn't explain. She didn't offer a hand. She simply stood between them and the ledge, not to block them, but to hold a space they were too afraid to claim. And for the first time the girl took a step back, not toward the door, but toward her. The woman didn't ask them to come inside. She didn't say, "Are you all right?" or "What were you thinking?" or anything that would push them back behind their walls. She just stood on the roof, silent, until the girl stepped toward her, not because she trusted her, but because she didn't know where else to go. And the boy? He didn't move until the wind picked up, and the girl hugged her arms tight against the cold. Then he stood too. The woman turned and walked back through the door without looking over her shoulder. The girl followed. Then the boy. Her apartment was on the 4th floor, the only unit on that level with light behind the curtain. It smelled like dried mint, old wood, and laundry that had been forgotten in the basket too long. The living room was small but warm. Books lined one wall. A kettle hissed in the corner like it had been waiting. There were no photos, just 3 frames turned face down. She motioned toward the couch. Neither of them sat. She poured tea instead. No sugar, no cream, just hot, sharp liquid in chipped white mugs. Then she said the first personal thing. "My name's Nora, or at least it is now." The girl blinked. "Now?" Nora sipped. "Names don't always fit forever." The boy spoke. "Is this where you live?" Nora nodded. 12 years, since I left the hospital." The girl's eyes flicked to a small metal box on the table, the kind nurses once used for pills. "You were a patient." Nora set her mug down. "No, a doctor. Emergency medicine, until I made a mistake." She said it plainly, not bitter, not proud. Just truth. The girl looked at the boy. The boy looked down. And Nora leaned forward. "I'm not going to ask why either of you were on that roof. I won't tell you what you should have done, but you're here now. That matters." The girl's voice cracked. "They're not going to come looking." Nora didn't ask who they were. She only said, "That doesn't mean you don't deserve to be found." The boy shifted. His hand trembled slightly. Then he whispered, "How do you know we're not dangerous?" Nora's gaze didn't waver. "I don't. But neither are you the first 2 strangers I've let into this apartment. And most of them were already hurting themselves long before anyone else ever tried to." They sat in silence for a long time. Then the girl who hadn't touched her tea said, "My name's June, but that's not the name they gave me. It's the one I chose when I stopped trying to be who they wanted." And the boy, after a long pause, said, "Tyler, I think." Nora didn't push further. She just said, "The couch pulls out. Sheets are clean. I don't snore, but the building creaks. Stay one night. Tomorrow we decide if this was a mistake." Neither of them agreed aloud. But when Nora turned to go into her room, they didn't run. And that night, 3 strangers slept under the same roof. The girl who wanted to vanish. The boy who didn't exist on paper. And the woman whose past still waited in a hospital file marked incident. The next morning, June woke with a start. The sun hadn't fully risen, but light bled through the sheer curtains, painting soft gold on the wooden floor. She sat up slowly, disoriented, and for a moment forgot where she was. Then she saw Tyler. He was curled in a tight ball at the far end of the pull-out couch, blanket kicked halfway off, one hand tucked beneath his cheek. His chest rose and fell steadily. He hadn't moved all night. She swung her legs over the side of the bed. The floor was cold. The apartment was quiet. But something had changed. There was a paper on the fridge, white, lined, torn from a notepad. A magnet, shaped like a bird, held it in place. In blocky handwriting, precise, deliberate, it read, "Rules, if you're staying. Don't lie to me unless it's to protect someone else. If you leave, leave a note. No stealing, not even the good tea. Don't talk about the roof. Don't clean the bookshelf, ever. You can stay 3 nights. After that, we talk. No goodbyes at the door. If you leave, just go. N." June read it 3 times. Her throat felt tight. It wasn't a contract. It wasn't a threat. But somehow it felt heavier than either. Tyler woke slowly, blinking in the morning haze. He saw her standing near the fridge, then the paper. He didn't say anything, just rubbed his eyes and sat up, the blanket slipping from his shoulders. "She really wrote that?" June nodded. "I think it's her version of breakfast." They didn't speak again until Nora returned, dressed in the same long coat, her hair tied back in a messy knot, a paper bag under one arm, and a bottle of orange juice in the other. "Morning," she said, not waiting for them to respond. "Toast or instant oatmeal? Choose fast." Tyler blinked. "Oatmeal?" "Good choice," she said, already boiling water. "I don't trust people who like toast too much. It says they're trying too hard to be simple." June nearly smiled. Nora handed them each a bowl, sat across the room in the old armchair, and opened the paper bag to reveal 2 library books and a small battered notebook. "I have questions," she said without looking up, "but I'll only ask one today." June tensed. "Not that kind of question," Nora added. She looked up now, her eyes calm and level. "Who do you miss that no one knows about?" June's spoon froze. Tyler dropped his. Silence. Then June, so quietly it was almost soundless, said, "My foster brother, Liam. He used to keep an extra spoon under his bed in case mine got taken away again." Nora nodded, as if she'd known something like that would come. Tyler didn't answer. Not then. But as they finished eating, he reached across the table and straightened the edge of June's napkin. It was a small gesture, barely more than a breath. But it said something like, "I heard you." Later, Nora left a second note, this time folded and placed on the edge of the table. "The door's open. If you leave, take your name with you. If you stay, you'll need to learn mine." Neither of them moved. Not toward the door. Not away from it. They just sat in the stillness, the refrigerator humming behind them, the morning stretching ahead like a space where someone might still begin again. Nora didn't ask them to help with anything, but when she brought home groceries the next day, a paper bag so heavy it tilted to one side, June met her at the door without a word and took it from her arms. Tyler held the door open quietly and didn't let it close until she was fully inside. There was no applause, no praise, just Nora's small nod of approval, like they were passing unspoken tests. That night, June couldn't sleep. She sat on the floor near the window, watching the street lamp flicker through the curtains. Somewhere in the building, a faucet dripped with irritating regularity. Tyler was asleep again, one arm covering his face. Nora hadn't come out of her room since dinner. June's gaze wandered to the bookshelf, the one in the corner, dustless and crammed. A sign on it read, "Do not touch." She didn't touch, but she looked and saw something strange. Among the novels and medical texts, there was a single binder, thick, taped along the spine, no title, just a name written in faded ink. L.R. Morgan, Maryland. She stared at it. Her mouth went dry. The name was familiar. It took her a moment to remember why. It was on a piece of paper in one of her own foster care files. She hadn't read the full report. No one ever let her, but she'd seen it. The name at the bottom of a page stamped Incident Non-Fatal Confidential. Morgan. She looked back toward Nora's door. It was closed. The next morning, June didn't eat. She sat at the table while Tyler quietly spread peanut butter on a cracker and stared at her without chewing. Nora noticed. "Something bothering you?" she asked. June didn't look up. "Your name isn't Nora." Nora didn't blink. "No, it's not." June's voice cracked. "You were in my file." Silence. Tyler looked between them, confused. Nora placed her spoon down precisely and folded her hands. "I was there the night your mother overdosed. I was the doctor who called it in, the one who tried to bring her back." June stood so suddenly her chair scraped the floor. "You left." "I was ordered out of the room." "You didn't fight." "I had already been suspended once for interfering. The second time would have cost me my license." June's chest heaved. "I was 5. Nora's voice was steady. "And I was the one who called social services. I told them to take you out that night. I made sure you were placed with someone who didn't drink." "You think that fixes it?" "No," Nora said. "I think it gave you time." The room pulsed with silence. June's eyes were full of something she didn't have a name for. Rage, grief, relief. Nora didn't flinch. "I changed my name," she said softly, "after the hearing, after they stopped trusting me with a scalpel." Tyler's voice cut through the silence. "What did you do wrong?" Nora looked at him, then at June, and finally answered. "I didn't leave when they told me to. Once I stayed. I tried to treat someone when the family refused intervention. I thought I knew best. I broke a line I wasn't supposed to." June narrowed her eyes. "So you stopped being a doctor?" "No, they stopped calling me one." Later that day, June found a note taped inside the bathroom cabinet mirror. It read, "You deserve the truth. Now you get to decide what to do with it." And under it, scribbled faintly in pen, "Your mother smiled when you laughed, even at the end." It was the first time in years that June allowed herself to cry in someone else's home. And the first time she didn't feel ashamed for it. Tyler didn't speak much for the next 2 days. He stayed close to the window in the living room, hood up even when it wasn't cold, eyes scanning the street like he expected someone to appear. He ate what Nora gave him, nodded when June asked if he was okay, but the air around him grew quieter. Too quiet. Nora noticed it, of course. She noticed everything. On the third morning, she poured a second cup of tea without asking and set it on the table beside him. Then she placed a single sheet of paper in front of him. It was blank. A pencil lay across the top edge. Tyler stared at it. "I don't want you to explain yourself," Nora said gently. "I just want you to know the difference between being seen and being exposed." He didn't move. She didn't push. Just walked back to the stove and stirred the pot of porridge. That night, after June had gone to bed and the apartment had gone quiet, Tyler crept from the couch to the kitchen table and sat with the paper. Then he wrote 3 words. "There is no Tyler." In the morning, Nora found it folded neatly, placed under the bird magnet on the fridge. She didn't show it to June. She didn't mention it when he came in, hair still wet from the sink, eyes red-rimmed. She just said, "Do you know how to hold a camera?" Tyler blinked. "Like for pictures?" Nora nodded. "It's Saturday. Farmer's market's open. I need help." "Why?" "Because I'm too old to crouch, and the radishes won't wait for you to find your name." He stared at her, uncertain. June raised an eyebrow from the table. "Go," she said, her tone gentle but firm. "Take the world back one picture at a time." They came back 2 hours later with bruised tomatoes, a camera full of crooked shots, and a dog Nora claimed had followed them, but Tyler had clearly named. They didn't talk about the note. They didn't talk about the name. But that evening, Tyler took off his hood for the first time. And June noticed that he smiled with his mouth closed like someone who had been told not to take up space, but was slowly deciding maybe he could. That night, June leaned against Nora's bedroom doorframe. "He's not who he said he was." "I know," Nora replied without looking up. "You're not either." "I know that, too." June hesitated, "But I still want to stay." Nora looked up then, her voice quieter than usual. "Then you're finally ready." "For what?" "For the truth to stop scaring you more than the lie." The next day, a letter arrived addressed to Nora. Real name blacked out. No return address. Inside, a photo. 2 teenagers on a rooftop, one standing on the edge, the other sitting cross-legged near the wall, waiting. And on the back, written in careful block letters, "Thank you for the pause." Nora rarely left the building. The grocery store was 4 blocks away. The library delivered. She'd built a world she could live in without reopening old corridors of memory. But this morning, she dressed differently. She wore a gray blouse ironed and a jacket that hadn't left its hanger in 2 years. June noticed. "Where are you going?" Nora smoothed her sleeve. "To say something I should have said a long time ago." Tyler looked up from the floor where the dog now named Marvin slept across his knees. "You're not leaving, are you?" "Not unless they drag me out." She didn't say who they were. But when she closed the door behind her, June followed her to the hallway without being asked. The clinic sat across town, behind a school and beside a bakery that hadn't changed owners in decades. Nora hadn't been inside it since the day she lost her license. The nurse at the desk blinked when she saw her. "Oh, don't think you're supposed to be here." "I know," Nora said. "I'm not here as a doctor." She handed the woman an envelope. Inside, a letter, 3 names, and a photo of a girl with a bruise on her cheek and a broken butterfly barrette in her hair. The one Nora had taken in secret 15 years ago and hidden, afraid of what it proved. "I didn't speak then," she said, voice even, "so I'm speaking now." Back home, the apartment was quieter than usual. June sat with Tyler, sorting laundry. Marvin had chewed through a slipper. Shit. When Nora returned, June looked up and asked, "Was it worth it?" Nora didn't answer right away. She walked to the bookshelf, pulled down the untitled binder, and placed it on the table. "I've carried a version of that question for 15 years. She opened it. Inside were records, photos, pages of case notes, some redacted, some handwritten, some marked with words like non-compliant, unstable, foster pending. Names they'd both seen before. June's hand trembled as she reached for one. This was her file. Nora nodded. "I kept it because no one else did, and because I wasn't allowed to tell you until now." June blinked hard, lips pressed together. Tyler said nothing, just leaned closer, reading names he didn't recognize, but that somehow made the room feel smaller, more real, more human. That night, June stood in the hallway, binder pressed to her chest. Tyler passed her, holding a mug of tea with both hands, eyes soft. And Nora sat in the chair near the window, curtains open, watching the moon rise over the city's jagged roofline. No one said what had changed, but something had. The room didn't feel like a stopgap anymore. It felt like a place where things were kept, and not just the broken things. Things worth holding, things worth stitching back together. The old mailbox outside Nora's building had never been replaced. The paint had chipped. The lock barely worked. Most tenants didn't even bother using it. But on Monday morning, someone not Nora taped a new label across the metal. 3 names. N. Morgan, J. Rhodes, T. No last name. It wasn't neat. The tape curled at the corners. The letters were smudged. But it was the most honest sign the building had ever worn. That afternoon, the 3 of them sat at the small kitchen table, a puzzle between them, each pretending they didn't care how long it took to finish. Tyler focused on the edge pieces. June sorted by color. Nora drank tea with both hands, pretending she didn't care about the missing corner. There was a knock. No one moved. A second knock. Louder. Nora stood first. Outside the door stood a man in a brown uniform, holding a clipboard and a sealed envelope. "Delivery for a Tyler?" He blinked, then slowly stepped forward. "That's me." The man smiled. "We found your form. Said you left no return address, but someone still replied." He handed over the envelope, nodded, and walked away before any of them could ask more. Tyler held it like it was a bomb. June stepped closer. "Do you want us to leave?" He shook his head. Nora said, "Open it when you're ready. Not before." He nodded, lips pressed tight. Later, he opened it alone. Inside, a photograph. A boy, a man, and a small camper van parked in the corner of a dusty lot. The boy in the picture wore the same hoodie Tyler now refused to take off. On the back, scribbled in ballpoint pen, "If you're reading this, I'm sorry. You didn't deserve to be left that way. Oh, I couldn't stay, but I looked. Tell Marvin I still owe him a sandwich. Dad." He brought the photo to Nora after midnight. She was awake, reading by the window. He handed it to her silently. She didn't ask questions. She didn't hug him. She didn't say she was sorry. She just looked at the picture, then at him, and finally said, "You have his smile, but your voice is yours." He blinked fast, rubbed at his face. "I don't know if I want to find him." "You don't have to," she said. "But now it's your choice, and that matters more than anything." He nodded and left the photo on the bookshelf next to the binder. In the morning, June poured 3 cups of coffee instead of 2. And when she passed Nora hers, she whispered, "I think we're staying." Nora smiled, and this time she let it stay on her face long enough to be noticed. The 4th name never appeared on the mailbox, but the door to the apartment was left unlocked more often. Just a little. Sometimes kids from the building knocked and asked for tape or string, or the lady with the dog. Sometimes, Tyler answered. Other times, June. No one ever asked where they came from, only where they'd been. June finished school. She didn't tell anyone at the ceremony that her last paper, an essay on trauma-informed care, had been written at a chipped kitchen table with Marvin's head in her lap, and a woman across from her correcting grammar with a red pen and steady hands. She also didn't mention that she hadn't written the paper to pass. She'd written it to stay. Tyler grew taller, stronger. He changed his hoodie, got a job at a bookstore, learned how to fix a sink, wrote letters he never sent. But he kept the dog. And on Sundays, he took Nora to the market and bought her the good radishes. And Nora, she didn't go back to medicine. She didn't try to. Instead, she opened the window each morning, watered the plant June gave her, taught Marvin new tricks, and started walking without her cane. Sometimes she still woke up afraid of the roof, of the old mistakes, of what she'd never said. But on those mornings, she found little things waiting. A new magnet on the fridge that read, "Rules are made to protect, not punish." a photo of June smiling beside her cap and gown, a sketch Tyler drew of her in the window with Marvin asleep beside her feet. Things she never asked for, but needed. And one day, after a long walk through the stairwell that had once held more ghosts than walls, she came home to find someone had left a note taped to the inside of the door. It read, "You didn't save us. You let us save ourselves. That's harder. Thank you." No name. Just a folded paper tucked into the edge of the frame. Nora pressed her fingers to it. She didn't cry, but she did sit for a long time in the chair by the window, curtain drawn slightly aside, and watched the sun crawl slowly across the floor. She had once come to the building to disappear. Now it held her story, and three others, all still unfolding, quietly, bravely, one breath at a time. She had once come to the building to disappear. Now it held her story, and three others, all still unfolding, quietly, bravely, one breath at a time.